So these two boards, that's going to be part of today's project. And I want to take a little time to tell you a little bit about these boards. I've had these boards for 60 years. You wonder, well, what is he doing with boards for 60 years? Well, I made a project in high school shop class, and the project was to use wood and metal. So what I made back then was a stand with two shelves on it. And I might have a picture of it around here somewhere. I'll put it in there if I did. But I bent some 1-inch tubing into a kind of an arch shape. I welded braces across it, and then I put these on it. There are screw holes in there, and it was a little stand. I really don't remember what I used it for 60 years ago, but maybe I had a guitar amplifier on it, or maybe a TV. Well, anyways, it stayed with my mother for a while, and once my wife and I got married, we took ownership of it, and we used it for probably a TV stand. And I know we put aquariums on it. I think we had one on the top shelf and the bottom shelf. I think it went to college with our daughter for a while. Came back to me, sat in, I think it was in the laundry room, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get it out of there. And I took the metal part off and kept these boards. And that's been over 20 years ago that I did that. What's kind of interesting is these glue joints. I use the old Elmer's glue that we had back then. Those joints are as tight as they've ever been, and it's been sitting in an unheated area for a long, long time. I'm going to go ahead and cut these up into strips. We're going to turn them into segments. I want to make something out of it where I can keep it because, well, it means a lot to me. Back side, looks like I never put finish on it. I'm going to take my sander here, I'm going to smooth that up, cut the segments, glue them together, and I'll flatten them off in the lathe. So, hopefully this turns out because, well, I just could never get rid of these boards. So let's go ahead and get going. Well, I have to admit this is going to feel kind of weird cutting these boards up after all these years. But you know what? If I don't do it right now, it's not going to happen. They're just going to sit there and be boards sitting out in the shop. So I just ran it across the joiner just to clean up the finish on the edge there. I'm going to start my overhead dust filtration system. It's made by Win, and if you want to see a good review on it, check out Louie's video he has on Spindles Workshop. He got one of these. I think his wife got it for him, and he got it all set up, and you can see a lot more about it if you're interested. They're really reasonably priced, and they work good. And I'm not sponsored by them, I'm just letting you know I really like mine. So let's go ahead and start cutting up some strips. Pretty quiet too. All set to cut some segments, and I've got the wedgie sled all set up. And by the way, these are the knobs that I printed on the 3D printer. I'll put a link in the description for it. And by the way, I've shared these on Tinkercad along with the other things I made. First ring's the smallest. The ring will be 19/32. The segment is 19/32. That's really small. So I know a lot of you have heard me talk about how much I love Deft Lacquer and that I've been using it a long, long time. And I also said that I worked on this board 60 years ago. Well, guess what? This is one of the first things that I used Deft Lacquer on right here on that board. I think actually the year before is when I first used it, but this definitely was 60 years ago when I used Deft. I'm going to get my air filtration unit going and turn the heat back on, and we'll start cutting these. My process in gluing rings is to do the first couple rings, starting at the base, working my way up. While the glue sets, I'll go over and cut enough segments for a couple more rings, and I'll just work my way up doing that. Air filter's still running because I just finished cutting these. I'm going to turn my heater on here pretty soon, and then I'll just start gluing them. Not a lot to say about it. You can just see some of this ring, and maybe that's all we really need to do. Well, I have quite a few rings glued up. I showed a couple of them, but it all looks pretty much the same. I'll show you what I did glue up. We'll move over to the lathe and I'll start gluing them on in place so I can get the segments lined up. This will probably take a couple days because I still have things going on. Got a couple smaller ones. Got this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I got a lot of them here, and that's number 2. I have number 1 in the lathe. It's the base. We're going to move over, start gluing them on. I flattened one side already on the disc sander. We'll glue that on, and we'll true them up. That's going to all look pretty similar, so I'll show you some of that. We'll actually be turning a little bit as we go, so I'll show you that as well. So as you can see, I'm over at the lathe. I'll show you how I glue these rings on this one. It'll be the same on the rest, but I'll use my cold jaws to center the rings. I have the first ring in the jaws over here, and it's flat and it doesn't have a hole in it. This will be the base. This is the number 2 ring, and I put Sharpie marks on each side of one of the joints. I have Sharpie marks on this side in the center of a segment. I'll line those up, glue them together. I think you can see a line I put on right here. I only need glue from here this direction, so I'll try to just keep most of it there. I'll run it up against there, clamp it, and I'll let it sit, and that'll be the process until I get all the rings, and there should be a total of 10 rings. For quite a few years I've been thinking about making a little cross-feed setup where I could set it at the proper cutting height and just crank a wheel, send the tool across his face and flatten it. Well, I've got the equipment to do it, I'm just not sure if I want anything that elaborate. So I've taken this platform that I purchased to show how to make a ring cutting system for a bowl on a board. I figured, well, I think I can use this. Here's what I come up with. As long as I have a flat place to put this against there, I can key in on that. Now it's parallel to the cut. So what I've done is I took this little micro carbide setup and I used my 3D printer to create this piece, which slides on there, and then I'll hold it against here and run it across and get it at the right thickness. Well, rather than guess, I've put a little stop on this board right here, and this is 3/4 of an inch, by the way. So looking at this, it's just about perfect, and that's what I used on the ring underneath it. So it was just happened to be just right. If it isn't, I just take and loosen up the set screws and pull the tool out till it's in the right place, then lock it back down. This is not going to take very much. I'll just take a couple light cuts here, holding it up against there. It's flat, and it's just a few thousandths big, which is good. I'll take my sanding board, just sand it up. Like so. And there we are. It's 751 thousandths. That's close enough to 3/4. I've gotten this far. I'm going to clean up the inside just so I don't have to reach down in. Let me get set up for that. Okay, I've got that outside pretty much what I want. Check the inside. I've got one low spot right here, and it's actually not even that bad at all. Actually, maybe this is the low spot. That's still got 9/16 there, no problem. So I'll go ahead and clean that up, and then we'll get the rest of the rings glued on. See you in the morning. Last ring. That's going to go here. Okay, I've got the inside sanded up. I've got this shaped up to right about here. I have one of my 3D printed cones in here for support. It's always good to be able to support a piece that sticks out. Something like this will create a lot of harmonics and it just kind of vibrates. So what I need to do is blend this down around here, and I think it'll be time to sand it. I just sharpened up my 1/2" bowl gouge. I think we're doing about 700 RPM. Actually, we can probably do about 930. Alright, that feels pretty good. I'll go over it with the negative rake scraper in case there is any kind of a little ripple, like right there. Those things are almost impossible to see in this wood, but I can feel it. And one right here. Maybe here. Alright, it is time to sand. I can't wait to put a finish on this. And what do you think I might use? Think about that. See if you guess right. I've decided I'll sand with sheets of paper for a couple reasons. These are segments, all the grain's going this way, so I'll be sanding with the grain. The other is I've got a couple curves on here and I can kind of feel them and adjust the paper to fit into place. So this is already pretty smooth from the negative rake scraper. It really cut nice. I'm going to start with 150 grit. I'll show you a little bit, but I'm going to turn my dust collector on and the air filtration unit, so it's going to get noisy. So I'll just show you a little bit like this, and it's all going to look exactly the same. Sanding in reverse. Okay, we're all set to put a finish on it. I sanded it to 400 and then I kind of burnished it out with the white Scotch Brite. So, how many of you guessed what finish I'll be using on this? Well, it should be pretty obvious. Deft Lacquer. So, that's what I used on the board 60 years ago. It's only fitting that I use it again. This is going to be brushed on at least a couple of coats because the boards were all brushed on. I've thinned this down a little bit. I used to spray it, which is why I bought a gallon. But I've got it thinned down. It should brush on nice. I will have to try to find my good lacquer brush. That's what it looks like. Tell you what, I think it looks better this way than it did a flat board. Well, it is all done, and I think you're really going to like this, or at least I hope you're really going to like this, because I absolutely love it. Just look at all those segments. Just look how they reflect that light. It's just so cool. You're looking at the edge grain of the board. Here's some of the leftovers. That's the flat grain. That's the edge grain. I really like how edge grain reacts to the light, and that just looks so cool. 7.5 inches in diameter, 7.5 inches tall. It's 4 inches across this way, and the base is 5 inches. And I did put a recess in there, but out of the same chunk of wood, I've made a disc. And I'll show you that at the end. You'll be able to see the other side a lot better. This is one of the only high-tech things I did on this project, so make sure you stick around to see those pictures. I did find my nice lacquer brush, and I brushed every coat on. I think it was 5 coats. So I tempted to spray it, but I'm going to stick with the fact that this was all brushed on. So I brushed everything on. And I used to brush a lot of lacquer on furniture and cabinets. Deft Lacquer again. So there's some techniques you can use to get the last couple of coats on there and leave it just glassy smooth with no streaks. And that's what I did, and it came out really nice. The other high-tech thing I did was I finished it with Acks abrasive paste and polish. Other than that, everything else was all old school. So I hope you enjoyed this video, because I'll tell you what, I sure enjoyed making this. If you liked the video, there's 3 things you could do that would really help my channel a lot. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you can, share the video around. This piece of wood has a lot of history, and I would love it if more people could see it. Back in 1963, when I first used this piece of wood, it's the same year I decided I wanted to be a wood pattern maker, and I went on to do exactly that. Also, if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. And if you are, you guys are the best. So till the next time, see you later.